Starting your day off with a take on Vegas you won't get anywhere else.
Hi, I'm Holly Madison.
Hi, this is William Shatner.
It is Larry the Cable Guy, and I listen. Why? Because I'm a good American. So is he. And if you don't listen to him, you need to pack up and leave this country.
This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Come on, guys!
Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? Good morning. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro at the new time slot, baby, 9 a.m. to noon. Glad you could join us. A lot to get to on a very, very busy news day on a Tuesday. Yeah, we'll get to all that stuff.
Yeah, the news is going up on a Tuesday. Hey, who does Larry the Cable Guy listen to again?
He listens to us. That's what he does.
All right,
if you don't like him, like the show, you could pack up and leave the country. He sounds like Donald. He sounds like Donald Trump. I'm telling you, every time I listen to that, I think it's
beautiful precursor.
Every time I listen to it, I think he's talking about Omar and Talib. I don't know the squad. I almost called them the Quad. I'm thinking of the Quad Casino. But anyway, we got a lot to get to today. The Hollywood conservative, as we like to call him, Mr. X, Hollywood producer in L.A., out there for a very long time, making movies, going to be joining us. Talk a little Trump with him. And coming up here, we're in hour number 3, we got to talk a little bit about our AAA affiliate, the Aviators. Wow, what a crazy story. Well, 2 stories with the Aviators. Number 1, we got the national championship AAA game that's going to be in Vegas in 2020. And what a story. Did you hear this story about this kid who was throwing, I believe it was at a major league ballpark. He was throwing the ball, pitching, I guess you could say. What do you call that? One of those radar machines where he's thrown into it? Help me out here. I know you're on your phone. Help me out here.
I believe it's just a radar.
Radar gun.
I think it's just a pitching radar gun.
I'm relying on your knowledge.
Kind of like when a police officer's on the side of the road and they.
Is that what it is?
I think it's kind of the same thing.
Well, anyway, he threw 96 miles an hour, and the A's decided to sign him to a professional contract. He made his debut yesterday. We'll tell you, he threw the ball. He threw it lights out. So we'll talk about that in hour number 3. You know, I get up this morning, and this is one of the few days where I'm actually walking to work because I live so close to the station. And one of the few days that I decide to walk to work, I see there's like 2 blocks that are closed off, police in every direction. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I had to take an alternate route just to walk to work. I guess it was a fatal car crash. Somebody put their car into a brick wall and tragically lost their life. But boy, I was thinking to myself for a second, when you close 2 or 3 blocks down, because I was in the news business as a reporter for 10 years, usually that means, yeah, there's a fatality, but usually it's a shooting or something more serious. Not to say that somebody losing their life in a car accident's not serious, but that's what happened. Literally 3 blocks have been closed for like the last several hours. It's been absolutely insane. But anyway, that's how my morning started today. But I want to start with, we talked a little bit, we touched upon this yesterday, and you know what, sometimes my opinions change. When it comes to Eric Garner, we covered the breaking news yesterday. Of course, the officer that put Garner in that chokehold, it was announced yesterday that he'd be losing his job from the New York Police Department. And I supported that, and I still support it. And I say that, look, he's lucky that he didn't get charged with, say, involuntary manslaughter. But I got to tell you something, guys. I watched that video over again. I did a little bit more research because I didn't know this breaking news was going to happen yesterday. We just were talking about it on the air. I gave my immediate opinions. I got to say, Eric Garner is no saint in this situation, and everyone is making him out to be a victim. Look, it's really sad what happened to him, and that chokehold should not have happened. Make no mistake about it. But this man was what, 300 pounds?
He was 6'7", 350 pounds.
Yeah, this was a huge guy, and I watched the video over and over again. There is no question that Eric Garner resisted. They tried to make an arrest, and he resisted. How dumb do you have to be as a human being when cops are trying to make an arrest that you resist arrest? Do you think that is going to make your situation better? That's number 1. Number 2, and we did have a caller call in yesterday, and he's absolutely right. This guy's been arrested 30 times. Not a good guy. Probably never worked a hard day's work in his life. That's number 2.
Well, let's go. Let's go to the 3-strike rule in California. What happens? 3, not 30.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This didn't happen in California.
The guy obviously didn't learn his lesson.
Well, no, of course not. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I mean, no respect for authority or law enforcement or the law,
but
clearly.
No, I agree. And that's the point I'm trying to make. But when we go specifically to this video, this Eric Garner video, and everybody wants him to make him out to be the saint in this situation. And again, I am for the officer getting fired. That chokehold was illegal. There's no question about it. But let me ask all of you a question. If you have a guy that's 350 pounds that is resisting arrest, what's next? The taser? Now, what would have happened, hypothetically, if Eric Garner was tasered? He had heart problems. He had asthma. He probably wouldn't have survived that.
He would have definitely died.
Right. So, again, I asked this question, and I talked about this shooting in Dayton, not the mass shooting. I'm talking about the 19-year-old African-American that was shot who did not comply with police. He had a gun on him and was shot. And I did take the side of police officers there. You get back to Eric Garner, if he just complies with police officers, right? If he just shows compliance, I guarantee you he certainly wouldn't have died that day. I don't know if he'd still be alive today, but he wouldn't have died 5 years ago. I'll tell you that much. And everybody wants to make this guy out to be, a hero. Same thing with Michael Brown. Now, these are two different cases. I get that. I'm not saying Eric Garner deserved to die. Michael Brown, in my personal opinion, did. But when you assault a police officer, you deserve what's coming to you. And if you get shot and you die, I don't feel bad for you. I feel bad for your family. I feel bad for your friends. I don't feel bad for you if you are attacking a police officer. Eric Garner didn't do that, but he resisted arrest. How dumb are you when you resist arrest? But nobody wants to talk about that. And his daughter does a press conference yesterday with Al Sharpton. You make it seem like, we're going to sue all those cops. None of those cops did anything wrong except for the guy who did the chokehold. Those other cops were doing their job.
And the reason the guy that did the chokehold, he did an illegal chokehold.
Right, exactly.
And that's the issue.
And that's why he lost his job, and you could have gotten him for involuntary manslaughter. I would not have had a problem with that. But those other police officers did absolutely nothing wrong. They were doing their job. Eric Garner did not comply with police officers. Again, I'm not saying he deserved to die, but when you do not comply and when you resist arrest, what do you think is going to happen? But nobody wants to talk about that. All Al Sharpton wants to do is talk about how, police brutality, this and that. But nobody puts any responsibility on the actions of the citizen who, by the way, was breaking the law and then resisted arrest. Now, I understand that Garner's daughter is very emotional. I understand, and I agree with her. I agree with what she's saying. It should not have taken 5 years for this police officer to be fired. Should not have taken 5 years. That is ludicrous. This should have been done within 6 months to a year. Conduct your investigation. Get rid of this cop. If he wants to work somewhere else, that's fine. Get him out of New York. It should not have taken 5 years. I agree with her. But to say these other officers did something wrong and all he was doing was selling cigarettes, he was breaking the law. They had a right to arrest him. He's been arrested 30 times. He's been cited for this before. This is not a good guy. He's also been arrested and charged with assault. Eric Garner was not a good human being based on his record. Did he deserve to die? No. Are police officers, judge, jury, and executioners? No. I side with the Garner family. That chokehold should not have happened. But put some responsibility on individuals in this country to comply with police officers. Do what they tell you to do. Does that mean 100% of the time you're going to get out of there unscathed? No. But it sure gives you a better chance. And I'll tell you right now, it is beyond a shadow of a doubt. If Eric Garner did what those officers told him to do, and he wasn't combative, and he didn't resist arrest, he would not have lost his life. Period. Yes, you can make the argument. If he didn't get that chokehold, he probably would still be alive today, too. Most likely. But I ask this question again. If you're 350 pounds and officers need to make an arrest and the individual is resisting arrest, what is the next step? I would say probably the taser. And a man who had a heart condition and had asthma, you think he would have survived that? Probably not. Doesn't excuse the chokehold. But where do we put responsibility?
Well, it's literally a lose-lose for the officers here. There is no winning scenario. And he knew he was breaking the law. He was fully aware that he wasn't being compliant with the law. If he'd been arrested 30 times, he knows exactly how the protocol works. He didn't need to resist arrest. Why would he do that?
Mm-hmm. Well,
this wasn't his first offense. It was his 31st offense. 31st.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the media is trying to turn him into some type of race martyr to push the political.
Well, they did the same thing with Michael Brown.
Needle, if you will. Of course they did, but then and it's going to keep happening over and over if we let it keep happening. And by we, I mean social media and people on the internet, people digitally, they creating a huge uproar, celebrities getting involved, et cetera, without actually breaking down the details of the case and really understanding what happened and why it happened.
Yep.
And that's what's going on right now. People are holding social court via social media. And it's pushing scenarios like this to the next level that should not be pushed to the next level.
It's a sad situation for the Garner family. There are no winners here. But I'm going to tell you right now, the Garner family, they've already lost. And they're going to continue to lose as far as the legal system goes because those other officers absolutely didn't do anything wrong. They were doing their job. They were trying to make an arrest, and there is zero responsibility on Garner. We'll take your phone calls, the GCI Guys hotline, if you want to be a part of this conversation. That number is 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the program, 702-257-5396. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. We'll take your calls, and you are not going to believe what a group of high school students did in California yesterday. It is unbelievably sickening. There's video to show it. I'll tell you exactly what they did. You're going to be shocked when we come back. Take a quick break. The Vegas Take, 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us on a Tuesday. A lot to get to. We got Mr. X, the Hollywood conservative, coming up in hour number 2. Jim Gemma from the Aviators will be joining us in hour number 3. What a wild story. A fan throws 96 miles an hour. He gets a professional baseball contract, makes his debut yesterday, strikes out the side, and he's in the Oakland organization. So we'll probably see him here in Las Vegas. Jim Gemma coming up here in hour number 3. Also a crazy story out of Lincoln County. The sheriff talking about how they're preparing for an emergency in regards to this Area 51 situation. It's crazy. We'll get to that, but we're talking about Garner and my thoughts on this whole situation with Eric Garner. It's a sad situation, but again, you have to comply with police. Do not resist police. Doesn't mean you deserve to die if you resist arrest, but you got to put a little bit of responsibility on what happened on Garner. I'm sorry, I'm going to do that. Number to call, 257-5396. Again, that number, 702-257-5396. Let's start off with Ed. Ed, what's going on?
What's up, Ed?
Yes. Well, both in law enforcement and military situations, you have these situations where there's hostages or that sort of thing, and someone takes over a theater or something. And what they need to do is spend some billions of dollars on some non-lethal force alternatives, instead of the next aircraft carrier or something.
Yeah.
Something that we, the Star Trek.
I understand, Ed. No, I understand, Ed. I get where you're going with this. So let me ask you a question. Now, we talked about if they had tased this guy, right? Because that would have been the next step. You have a man that's 350 pounds, and he's resisting arrest. You have to tase the guy. Now, what do you think would have happened if they tased Eric Garner?
He probably would have died anyway. In
right.
fact, I went by that taser down in Scottsdale once. They have a big building there, and someone said there are more attorneys and legal people there than engineers because just to keep the taser out there and fend off lawsuits, they have to spend more money on legal than research and development.
Ed, and I agree with you, Ed, and by the way, I appreciate the call. You know what would solve that? Body cameras and audio need to be on 24/7. Not only will it protect the officers, but it will protect citizens. I agree. That needs to be mandatory. A police officer should not be allowed to turn off his body camera or turn off the audio. The only reason why they do that is because they don't want you to hear what they're saying. 257-5396. Marge, you're next. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
As far as Eric Garner, I mean, I know the police called for backup, and obviously they knew who this guy was, especially with his history. Yeah. I don't know if they knew his medical condition, to your question about, the taser. But they probably figured that with his weight, that wouldn't be a good strategy. No, I agree. The chokehold was totally uncalled for.
Yeah.
But they had 5 cops there. I mean, why they couldn't restrain him, even though with 300 pounds, is still a mystery to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that he died. I think the whole thing with social media, though, trying these cases, is this speaks to racism again in what we're dealing with in this country, unfortunately.
I sort of agree, but then again, I sort of don't. I don't know if there's proof that look, Marge, this guy's been arrested 30 times. Okay, yeah. Garner was arrested 30 times. Not a good guy.
No.
Did he deserve to die? Absolutely not. Was the chokehold legal? Absolutely not. Right. But the problem that I have, Marge, is that he resisted. Now, if he didn't resist arrest and he was just standing there and the guy just, they just went up to him and did that. It would have been a totally different scenario. I guess the point I'm trying to make, Marge, there's no winners here, but I think I understand that the Garner family is trying to continue and prosecute some of these other officers. But, Marge, I just don't think it's going to happen. I appreciate the call, Marge, as always. Thank you so much. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Kevin. Kevin, you are next on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. What you said that Kevin that he was a bad guy, 30 arrests, selling cigarettes. What else could have been done? How is he the bad guy? He paid the ultimate.
Okay, let me explain. Let me explain that. He was convicted of assault. He has been arrested 30 times. That is somebody that is not a law-abiding citizen. He didn't have a job. He was doing something illegal. Now, somebody who has been arrested 30 times in their life, starting from when they were a kid, clearly the guy hasn't learned his lesson, and anybody who resists arrest is a moron, as far as I am concerned.
So you think that the natural reaction to resist is just you're a moron if you resist?
First of all, that's not Kevin, I'm going to disagree with you. That's not a natural reaction. When a police officer wants to make an arrest on you, you call that a natural reaction to resist arrest?
If you put your hands on me, I guarantee you, if I'm not doing something wrong, yeah.
Okay, first of all, he was...
Okay, I don't give a damn what you're wearing.
Okay, hold on. First of all, he was doing something wrong, so that's not correct. And number two...
Okay, so there.
Now,
how many black men are standing out here not doing anything wrong?
Okay,
walks up,
not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about the Garner situation. That is a different conversation.
So let's talk specifically about the Eric Garner case.
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
You can clearly see. Now, you say you watched the tape and he was resisting.
Well,
his
he did.
hands were out of his side.
He did.
He's being choked to death.
I don't condone that. If you listen to what I just said, I said that officer should...
I already listened to what you said.
Okay.
But you keep on trying to spin this so that...
I'm not spinning anything.
The cops are the good guys here.
Excuse me, what did the other cops do that were wrong? What did the other cops do that were wrong? I'm not talking...
the man to death, you moron.
Excuse me, I'm not talking about the guy who choked. Why don't you listen, okay? I'm talking about the other officers. I started this show by saying the guy who choked him probably should have gotten involuntary manslaughter. Why don't you open up your ears and listen? I asked you a specific question.
Why don't you open up your ears?
Okay, then I'm asking you a question.
Let go of his neck, dumbass.
Okay. You keep. First of all, I'm not a dumbass. Number one, and number two, I just said it over and over again.
Okay, I'm going to go of his neck. That's an illegal chokehold.
I'm going to say it again. That officer should have been charged with involuntary manslaughter.
And the other officers around that laid pressure on the body as well. You guys use a swarm technique to crush the person's ability to breathe. You already see it. Don't act like you don't see it.
What do you mean, don't act like I don't see it? What are you talking about?
What's the swarm technique? What is
that? Was illegal. How much more? I've said it 5 times in this conversation.
That's why you implement the swarm technique.
So you think the other officers should be charged with a crime? Is that what you're trying to say, Kevin?
Everybody is responsible.
What should they be charged with?
What should get a chokehold on a guy up on the strip
I'm asking.
A month ago.
Let's focus on this. What should the other officers be charged with?
Look,
I'm asking you a question. Answer the question.
It took you. I give 2 shits about the other officers right now.
Okay, well you're not gonna swear on this show. You're a moron also. If you're gonna swear, you can't even have a conversation without swearing at somebody. A natural reaction? You think it's a natural reaction, Kevin? To resist arrest? What kind of idiot would make a comment like that?
Hey, great call, Kevin.
If a police... What do you mean great call? What are you talking about? The guy's an idiot. He swears on the show. Clearly, he can't have an intellectual conversation.
The issue is that if they did tase him, he was 6'7", 350 pounds. If they did tase him, he would have probably died. And that was the only way to really restrain him because he's such a big man.
Here's
and that's
the problem.
Why it required multiple men.
Right. But here's the problem with this call. He thinks the other officer should be charged with something. That is asinine. That is ridiculous.
He's trying to say they're accessory to a crime.
Which is ridiculous. That's never going to happen, number one. Number two, I said over and over again, the chokehold was illegal. But the problem with people like Kevin is this. They put no responsibility on somebody that resists arrest. They put no responsibility on a guy that's been arrested 30 times that was clearly breaking the law.
Yeah, he's trying to make it about race.
Right. I don't think this is about race at all. The guy's been...
Eric Garner... When you're arrested 30 times, you know right from wrong.
Of course. Of course.
You're choosing to break the law consistently. Even though you know that you can't break the law and that you're going to get in trouble for doing it, you continue to do it because you think you are above the law. Mm-hmm. And clearly that's what Eric Garner believed.
Mm-hmm. And in that situation, resisting arrest is not a natural reaction. Kevin...
Especially when it's happened to you 30 times in the past. Maybe the first time, maybe, but 30 times?
When an officer grabs your arm, and by the way, worst case scenario, that's what happened before the chokehold. His arm was grabbed. You let the officer grab your arm and let him cuff you. Don't you give me this crap that it's a natural reaction to resist arrest. Then why do so many people in this country not resist arrest? Kevin, how do you explain that one?
It would be a natural reaction if it was your first time ever, but your 31st time, it is an absolute learned reaction to resist arrest.
The problem with Kevin is he's putting emotion into this, and he's putting the anger in this instead of...
he's turning this into a racial issue.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a racial issue. I think it's, again, no responsibility on Garner. No responsibility. Resisting arrest is a natural reaction. No, it's not a natural reaction. It's a dumb reaction. That's called logic, Kevin. Okay? If you teach your kids that that's a natural reaction, hey, if a cop grabs you, resist arrest, then you are an idiot. We're going to take more calls on this at 257-5396. 257-5396. Take a break. Be back right after this. You are listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, so glad you could join us. We're talking about this Eric Garner situation. Why I think some responsibility has to be put on Eric Garner. It has to be put on people in society that do not comply with police officers, that resist arrest. It doesn't mean you deserve to die. It doesn't mean that you should get a chokehold. Clearly, I am not on the officer's side, but I don't think those other officers did anything wrong, and I think some responsibility has to go on these individuals that do not comply with police.
And again, we are recognizing the fact that it was an illegal chokehold.
Absolutely.
We're saying, yes, this guy should lose his job, if not be charged with a crime.
Yes. 257-5396, the number to call. Let's go to Brady. Brady, what's going on?
What's up, Brady?
Yeah, right on, Brian. The moral of the story is cigarettes really do kill.
Well, that's a bad joke, Brady, unfortunately, but what do you got for us?
Well, I have a kind of a problem. I kind of saw the video of what happened to the guy, and here you got 4 officers jumping on a guy over his cigarette sale. Maybe New York City I think he was in New York.
Yes.
They should have legalized the cigarettes along with the marijuana, so nobody ever gets jumped on and choked out.
Okay,
over
so let me ask you.
A joint.
I understand what you're saying, Brady, but let me ask you this question: he's clearly breaking the law. And police are entitled to make an arrest at that point. So what are they supposed to do? Just say, don't worry about it? Are they supposed to just move along?
Well, you look at all the situations that's happening with the cops these days. They don't just shoot to injure, which they should.
They're not trained, Brady.
They shoot to kill your ass. So
Brady,
you're dead, and dead people can't talk.
Brady, do you understand what the training is like in the police department? Do you think they're trained to shoot to injure? No, they are trained to shoot center mass. What is center mass? They are trained to shoot
to kill you. When you're standing 10 feet away with the Glock, tell me they can't shoot you in the leg. Come on,
not
man.
okay. But Brady, they wouldn't be following proper police protocol. If you think proper police protocol should change, that's a different conversation, Brady. But they are not trained to shoot to injure, and I can't stand when people make that argument. They are trained to shoot center mass. That is the way it goes. Let's go to Brian, 257-5396. Brian, what's going on?
What's up, Brian?
Hey, we're on the same page today, Brian.
Well, Brian, I have to give you credit. Listen, I have to give you credit, Brian, and I admit at times I am not always perfect. I'm usually right 99.9% of the time, but I was a little wrong yesterday. Brian, here's why.
He actually told me at break that he was perfect.
That's not true. Listen, Brian, I hadn't seen the video in 5 years, okay? And last night, I watched the video over and over again, and I did do some research, as you mentioned on the show yesterday, that he was arrested 30 times in the past. So let's not, have this narrative that he was a great guy, because clearly he wasn't. But going to the video, he clearly resists arrest, right? You would agree on that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's no question.
Yeah, Brian,
all they
I
wanted
will
to
admit.
do was they didn't have cuffs. Unfortunately, they had those ties.
Right.
And he's a big guy. Maybe the cuffs don't fit. I don't know. But, all he had to do was comply. Everything would have been okay.
Yeah, I don't know if everything would have been okay, but certainly he wouldn't have died.
No.
When you resist arrest, you give officers a reason to tase you. Now, I don't know what would have happened if they tased him, but going back to this officer, my opinion hasn't changed. That could have been involuntary manslaughter. It was an illegal chokehold, and I don't think that officer should ever be a cop ever again. He might somewhere else, but I agree with the firing.
What I want to go into today is your caller 2 callers ago, Kevin.
Yes.
And his attitude. He has a chip on his shoulder. When he made the statement, I don't care who you are, you lay your hands on me, you're going to get it back.
Yeah, well, that's stupidity.
Now, let me tell you what I tell my kids when they come to town. My youngest daughter is JD's age. I mean, she's 31 going on 32. And
does she like bald radio guys?
She's happily married.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Go ahead.
But anyway, whether it's her or my other kids, my nieces, nephews, whatever, I sit them down, I have a little talk with them. I say, you're in a very large city now. We have hundreds of thousands of visitors from all over the world here.
Right.
Most of them are here to have a great time.
Brian, there's actually 1 million visitors a week here right
with
now.
These people. And if you encounter the police officers, this is what you do.
Right.
It's yes, sir. No, sir. Yes,
I agree.
Officer.
I agree.
You show them your hands. You don't make any quick movements. You listen to what they say. And what they want you to do, you comply with it.
Absolutely. And Brian, and I appreciate the call, Brian, and I couldn't agree with you more. If you comply with police officers, I do not care what the color of your skin is. It gives you a much better chance of being unscathed in that situation. Is it 100% foolproof? No. But if you don't comply, you're giving officers an opportunity to use force. You hope it's not lethal force.
And the best thing you can do is just not knowingly break the law.
Yeah, well, that would help too. 257-5396. Let's go to Josh. Josh, what's going on?
What's up, Josh?
Josh, did we lose you?
Hello, Josh.
Josh was on his Obama phone. You can call back, Josh. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Chris. Is Chris next on the Vegas Take? Let's go to Chris. Chris, what's going on? Chris,
hey, what's going on?
What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? Just giving a call in. I completely agree with you. Me being a black man in America, it is not a race thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched the video a couple of weeks back. Funny that I heard the story today. He has no business being in front of a store, let alone selling cigarettes.
Right.
You know? And it, like I said, I completely agree with you. It's not a race thing.
Chris, you know what I think is worse, Chris? Chris, and this is the big issue, is that he resists arrest. And you heard another African-American, Chris, another African-American called into the show, Kevin, and he said, if somebody touches me, that's my natural reaction. Maybe if that's not an appropriate statement to make, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's not an appropriate state to make, and it's not a natural reaction. That shows uneducation. What I mean by uneducation, or him being uneducated, is because me being a black man in America, when the police stop me, like I said, yes, sir, no, sir, show them my hands, because it's just showing respect. They have a job to do, just like we all do. And the fact that he brought race into it makes us look bad.
I agree.
I totally agree.
Chris, how old are you?
29.
Do you have any kids, Chris?
Just 2.
So, Chris, what will you tell your kids in regards to if you get into a situation with police? What would be your advice to them?
Just listen to them. If they have something to say, you listen to them. You show them your hands. Like I heard you guys say, no quick movements, yes sir, no sir. If you're going to get arrested, you're going to get arrested. Nobody goes to jail for life for doing anything small.
I'm going to tell you something.
And if you've done something small and if you've got a decent amount of money, you can call an attorney and help yourself out in the first place.
Chris, I'm going to tell you something. If there were more parents out there like you, less people would be getting shot and killed by police. That is 100% a fact. Chris, I'm so glad you called. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great call, Chris.
Appreciate your perspective.
And something else that's not being talked about here, if he's selling cigarettes, if he's trying to undercut a cigarette store in front of the cigarette store, which is what he was doing,
right,
then I'm sure that the owner of the store wasn't very happy with what was going on.
Oh, I'm sure he wasn't. But, to me, the big issue here is not the crime that he was committing. It is resisting arrest. That crime, to me, is what escalated the situation. 702-257-5396. We're talking about the Eric Garner situation, the fact that the officer who committed the illegal chokehold got fired. I am not on the side of that officer. However, I think at least some responsibility needs to go on Eric Garner. We'll take a few more calls on this on the GCI Guys hotline. Again, that number, 257-5396. Let's go to Pat. Pat, what's going on?
Hey, good morning.
What's up, Pat?
Hey, I'm a retired cop, and I just was calling in to let you know that once a police officer says you're under arrest, it takes away all your rights, including the right to resist.
Right.
So it's pretty simple, pretty cut and dry.
Pat, how long have you been a cop?
28 years.
So let me ask you a question, Pat. I'm glad you called in. If that gentleman doesn't do the chokehold, could the next step would have been legal for them to tase him?
Actually, the department I'm from, it's legal to tase somebody as soon as they don't follow verbal commands.
And this guy, and Pat, the reason why I asked that question is because, and again, I'm sure we all agree the chokehold was not the appropriate action. But
well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, no. I don't know what the city of New York's policies are, but most use of force scenarios and continuums, they are general guidelines because most administrations know that that your not everything works all the time, and most guidelines will state at the bottom that whatever means are necessary to gain control.
So why was he fired then, Pat?
Well, I think it's more political than following. It was more of a political firing versus a following the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm.
So
they didn't want the backlash from social media.
Yeah, I don't know what New York's policy is. I know the department I worked for, the use of force continuum are guidelines, and chokeholds are discouraged. Chokeholds are controversial, but I don't think. I can't speak for New York, but I know it wasn't illegal.
No, I understand. But you know what else should be discouraged, Pat? Not complying with police officers.
No, I agree.
Or committing the same crime 31 times.
Well, Pat,
you have a 100% valid point, and that was the point of me calling in, was that once an officer says you're under arrest, your rights to resist, your rights to do anything are revoked.
I'm glad you made that clear,
and
Pat.
There's no way he didn't know that, considering he'd been arrested 30 times before.
Right.
Well, Pat, listen, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate what you do, and whenever I get a speeding ticket, I know who to call. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
I appreciate the call. 702-257-5396 is the number. Let us go to Roman. Roman, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
What's up, Roman?
I agree with what you're saying, but I've got a flip side to that, and I don't know what's right. There's a line that's in between what you guys are saying, and I wanted to bring up, and maybe I don't know anything about law, but I wanted to bring up a movie called A Few Good Men, and that starred Tom Cruise and Jack Nicklaus.
Yep.
And
that was a great movie.
Jack Nicklaus is a golfer. Jack Nicklaus is a golfer. You mean Jack Nicholson? Okay, that's right. Hey, listen, I'm sure Jack Nicklaus would be a great actor.
It also starred a young Demi Moore.
You know the movie?
I do, Roman. It's quite all right, Roman.
So,
the Code Red.
He basically says you can't handle the truth. We all know what we're talking about, or I'm talking about.
Sure.
Again, I'm a little bit nervous. So
it's okay. You're doing good.
Too bad.
Roman, you're doing good. By the way, isn't Roman that website where you can buy Viagra? I've seen your commercial on TV all the time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll leave it at that. I didn't like that one, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
The point is that the others that were watching, and that others, because I saw what happened 5 years ago. I saw it was on the news. And my point is there was other officers that were looking at that. Now, whether they're trained on knowing what this type of chokehold is or not, is definitely a factor. So this is something that you're not supposed to do. So if the officer that was doing it...
I get what you're saying. Roman, let me ask you a question, okay?
Please.
Split-second decision. The officers want to have each other's back. They're trying to make an arrest. In that 2 or 3 seconds, and that's what we're talking about here, it was a chokehold, and then he took him to the ground. In those 2 or 3 seconds, I don't think it's fair to think those officers would say, hey, get your arm off his neck. Get off of him instead of trying to make an arrest and subdue the guy who was resisting arrest. I don't think that is a fair expectation.
I think you have to think about this
officers.
As well. Would a legal chokehold have taken him down, or was he just too big of a guy and he had to go with an illegal chokehold?
That's true too. But let me interject to that, and that is, aren't they trained to understand that this type of chokehold is not legal and should it not be used? And then wouldn't it have been better that they used the taser? And then even if he would have died, I'm being very respectful to the family and to this person who's lost his life. Wouldn't it be better that way that the officer would use that type of thing, because he wouldn't have lost
Roman,
his job,
absolutely.
and
Roman,
this question would have never came up.
Roman, make no mistake about it. I have not defended that officer with that chokehold. In fact, I believe he could have been charged with involuntary manslaughter. Now, listen, Roman, in a perfect world, would it have been nice for those 3 or 4 officers to say, hey, get your arm off of him? That's an illegal chokehold. But I think if we're all going to be honest,
you're right. No, you got a point.
In a perfect world, that would have been nice. But I don't think that's a fair expectation in that situation, and I don't think those officers should be charged with anything. That's number one. Number two, in regards to the taser, yes, I've mentioned that this hour. I believe the appropriate next action, and we just had a police officer, 26 years, just called in. The next action, they would have been totally within their rights to tase that guy. The guy probably would have died. He was overweight. He had heart problems. He had asthma. Guess what? When you have those types of health problems and you're breaking the law and you've been arrested 30 times in your life, you probably shouldn't resist arrest. Why don't?
I agree.
Why don't people? Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. You've changed my mind. I shoot weapons on the weekends just for sport, and I go through a course. It's very your heart changes, and the way that you operate changes, and that type of understanding is You're right, I think, on that.
Well, Roman, listen, I
changed my mind.
Well, listen, I'm a mind changer, Roman. You might actually think that this is a great radio show. Roman, thanks for calling.
The adrenaline goes up when you're firing like that. So I
believe
see
that.
your point.
Yes.
I can see your point that
Thank you.
the officers didn't recognize
Yeah.
that. So
I appreciate that, Roman. I'm glad you're able to. I'm glad I was able to change your mind.
And you know what? In modern America, in this digital age, these officers, despite the fact that they shouldn't be charged with anything, if 500,000 people go on social media and plead for them to be charged with something, I could see it happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could definitely see it happening.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I alluded to this story last segment. You're not going to believe what some high school students did. And guess what? It involves Adolf Hitler. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this with that. You're listening to The Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. Welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro on a Tuesday. By the way, coming up in hour number 2, we are going to have a man, we call him Mr. X, Mr. Hollywood Conservative. That's right. He is a Trump supporter in Hollywood, a Hollywood producer. Will not give out his real name on the air in fear of losing his job, and there's good reason for that. Trust me. He'll be joining us in hour number 2. Hour number 3, Jim Gemma from the Aviators. What a wild story. A baseball fan seen throwing a ball 96 miles an hour, gets signed to a professional baseball contract. He struck out the side yesterday, and he's in the Aviators. He's in the not AAA, he's in the Oakland A's farm system. We will probably see him in Vegas sometime soon. Jim Gemma with the Aviators will be joining us in hour number 3. I want to give a quick story about complying with police. And I know we got to get to this Nazi story, a bunch of high schoolers pretending to be Nazis. We'll get to that in a second. I was on a date. I know that's hard to believe. I do go on dates from time to time. But I was on a date. This is like 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm following my date to a restaurant, and I get pulled over by a police officer. I have absolutely no idea why. The cop pulls me over. First thing he says to me is, you were speeding or this. None of that stuff. He says, get out of the car. So I look at him and I say, officer, I'll get out of the car, but can you tell me what I did wrong? He says again, get the F out of the car. I say, okay. I comply. I listen. I don't drive away like some idiots would do. My natural reaction was to comply. I get out of the car. He grabs my shirt. He pushes me against my car, and he puts handcuffs on me. Now, I was thinking to myself, boy, I was angry. I was thinking to myself, man, I feel like I want to hit this guy. But guess what? I didn't do it. Because who knows what would have happened. Maybe I would have ended up like Eric Garner. My natural response was anger, but I didn't act on anger. I didn't assault a police officer or resist arrest. He handcuffs me, tells my date to drive home. So she's thinking, wow, I'm going out with a career criminal here. 5 minutes, I'm handcuffed. And the officer says to me, we have reason to believe this car is stolen. First of all, it's an 04 Hyundai Elantra. So if anyone's going to steal a car, I don't think it'd be mine. That's number one. Number 2, I'm saying, officer, why don't you just take my driver's license? This is my car. I own this car. 5 to 10 minutes go by. He comes back. He uncuffs me. Doesn't say sorry. He says, we had reason to believe this car was stolen. Your license plate was very similar to another description. I looked at him and I said, are you kidding me? I was pissed. And I looked at him and I said, why didn't you just take my driver's license and why didn't you tell me from the beginning? I said, what's wrong with you? And I thought for a second. I said, should I try to get this guy in trouble? And I said to myself, probably. I asked for his name. To be honest with you, I didn't follow through on it. I didn't contact Metro Police because I thought it'd be a waste of time and probably nothing would be done. But that's a situation where if there are body cameras 100% of the time, 24/7 and video, yeah, I probably would have had some sort of lawsuit. But the point I'm trying to make and the reason why I share that story is because we had a caller, Kevin, that was on last segment. And he said, as an African-American, his response was, the natural reaction is if somebody touches me, I fight back. He said something along those lines, right? JD, is that what he said?
Yeah, he said, I don't care who you are. If you touch me, I'm fighting back.
Yeah, how low of an IQ do you have to make a statement like that?
Incredibly unreasonable.
And you wonder why there are so many people that get hurt or even killed by police when they resist arrest. Because of idiots like that, a guy who just called into the show, who basically said, I don't care if you're law enforcement or not, I'm going to basically resist arrest.
What he should have said was, if I'm doing nothing, I'm going to wonder why I'm being touched, and then I'm going to think about it.
Doesn't matter if you're doing nothing.
If you're on the corner selling drugs or selling cigarettes, and an officer comes behind you and grabs your arm and says, hey, stop doing that, why would you resist arrest? You are breaking the law.
And that is what Eric Garner did. Did he deserve a chokehold? Did he deserve to die? No. He resisted arrest. And when these idiots will stop with this stupid attitude. Listen, let me tell you something. Even if the officer is 100% in the wrong and you truly did nothing wrong, by the way, 90% of the time that's not the case. Okay, Eric Garner was breaking law. But hold on, let me just finish my point. Even if you're doing nothing wrong and you are pushed against a car like I was, in a way, physically assaulted and put handcuffs on you, that does not give you the right to resist arrest. Right?
No, and you could always contact an attorney or the HR department at the police department after the fact. I have a story. I'm from small town Iowa, Council Bluffs, Iowa, and I was 17 years old. I was pulled over in my car, and there was a guy in Omaha, Nebraska, about 10 miles away, who had the exact same name as me, the exact same name. But this guy had been in several high-speed police chases. And so when I was pulled over for something very, very routine, I had 7 officers show up because they thought that I was this guy, because he had taken police on several chases all over the Midwest on multiple occasions.
Yeah. It happens.
Those things take place.
Now,
and sometimes circumstances, sometimes there's coincidences. That's what both of these things were.
Could it happen more if you're a minority? Absolutely.
It's possible.
Could it happen more if they don't look like you and me? Absolutely. But that does not give you a right to resist a police officer or assault a police officer or resist arrest. Make no mistake about it. Under no circumstance should you be resisting arrest. And if you do resist arrest, and if you're dumb enough to do that, it's not a natural reaction. And if you live in society and you're telling me your natural reaction is to resist a police officer and not comply, then you deserve what's coming to you. As far as I'm concerned, you are an ignoramus and you should not be in society.
Or you're definitely going to learn the hard way, 100%, at some point in your life.
And it's very unfortunate what happened to Garner. I wish that chokehold didn't happen. But you know what? He probably would have been tased, and who knows, maybe he would have had the same result. But that does not excuse what that officer did. He was fired. I hope he's never a police officer again. But
there's no chance that he will be, at least not in the United States.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
I don't think
he's allowed to apply elsewhere. That's not true. He's allowed to be a police officer, just not in New York at NYPD. He could actually apply in upstate New York, I think. But anyway, we got to take a quick break. I'll be back right after this. I want to get to this story. High school students in California